I wanted to talk about really a couple of different areas, all dealing with this budget and how it impacts recovery, our ability to rebuild as a state, and resiliency, which I think should be our mantra after any kind of disaster. You know, we've talked for a long time on this floor and in this body about how so many of our residents in California are only a couple of paychecks away from financial ruin. And we've now seen what happens when we have an entire state that loses its paycheck for a couple of weeks. And I think that that should show us that our economy is not nearly as resilient as we may have thought. We've had for a long time an economy in California that's worked extremely well for a very few amount of people. And when we talk about rebuilding and recovery, I hope that our recovery is not just with an eye towards getting back where we were, but figuring out how to solve those issues that led to so many Californians being just a couple of paychecks away from losing the roof over their heads. Now, COVID-19 has hit certain populations more than others. It's no surprise to a lot of us that it's hit our socioeconomically disadvantaged communities, our Black and our brown communities, more than it's hurt a lot of other communities. Now, there's a lot of reasons to go into that. I don't think it's genetics. I think it has a lot to do with systemic and long-term underinvestments in those communities and those populations, and the results that that's had have been really traumatic. And we've got to fix that and make sure that our budget doesn't do more harm to those very communities. That means that we need to make sure that we protect our investments in child care, in health outcomes and our health facilities, in our elderly who are frail and making sure that they're protected, in our foster youth who are so disproportionately affected by homelessness and by later on going into prisons, in affordable housing and homelessness that in Los Angeles already were really the shame of the state, and in many parts of the state, this is going to make that exponentially worse, and certainly in education, which should be the pride of our state. Now, the other thing I want to talk about before I get to specific examples is really resiliency and making sure that when we invest, that we don't pull investments from something that today might help balance our budget, but that down the road are going to cost us exponentially more because they were programs that kept us safe, that either kept us physically safe because of our infrastructure or kept our communities safe by investing in those social programs. And later, future generations, even maybe just 5 years down the road, are going to cost us much, much more, not just in our budget and financial terms, but in human cost, in real human cost. So let's just talk about a few of those. First, as I mentioned, housing and homelessness. Now, it's estimated that the shortage of affordable housing in California depresses the GDP just across, let's take LA metro area, by more than 2%. This translates into $18 to $22 billion annually in lost output just for the Los Angeles region, and almost double that amount for all of LA County. I urge you to specify that the Tax Credit Allocation Committee awards $500 million in affordable housing prevention tax credits. This allowance can preserve the affordability of roughly 25,000 affordable rental homes and mobile home spaces. Now, foster youth are already in such a precarious position in our state. And with the administration's cuts to vital programs that are proposed in the budget, we risk irreparable harm to that community. You have proposed eliminating the Housing Navigator program, which will have a disproportionate impact on foster youth. And I just wanted to also say, and I wanted to spend more time on this, so if you'll just give me a couple of seconds, as chair of Natural Resources Committee in the Assembly, I'm very concerned about the rollback of key programs and funding specifically designed to protect Californians from crisis when it comes to wildfire. I really want to make sure the administration looks at how funding is allocated. In the Los Angeles region, we have communities, high population communities, that are at very high risk of wildfire, but because we have chaparral and not high value forests, Los Angeles only receives a small percentage of the funds for the kinds of remediation and mitigation that could really reduce risk all across Southern California. And we need to make sure that we invest in ecological habitat restoration and that we know down the line will save us in lives and also in financial cost. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members.